When you read the story of Yosef, you can't help but marvel about how he doesn't just pass every test that he faces, he crushes every test. And he empowers us to face and ace every test in our lives. He's only 17 when his brothers sell him as a slave. He gets to Egypt, and the beautiful wife of his master starts trying to seduce him on a daily basis. But he does not give in. She frames him. He's thrown into a dungeon, and then he identifies himself there as a Jew. I'm sure it was no safer then to do that than it would be now. He gets pulled out of the dungeon. Pharaoh says to him, "Joe, I hear you're good at interpreting dreams." He says, "No, Your Excellency, God will answer you." How in the world did he develop that incredible degree of self-restraint and Jewish pride and belief in and commitment to God at such a young age? I came across a somewhat obscure book of midrashic explanation that will help answer that question. The Midrash fills in some of the gaps in the story. It tells us that after Yosef was sold, his new captors took him past Bethlehem, the area where his mother, Rachel was buried. And when he passed by her grave, he threw himself on top of it and started crying, wailing, screaming, "Mom, wake up! Wake up, Mother! Look at my tears. Feel my pain. Look what my brothers did to me. Pray for me. Help me. Be here for me." And he kept wailing and crying until finally he was spent. He had nothing left. And so he was just lying silently on top of her grave, when suddenly he heard a voice coming from below the ground. The voice of his mother, the voice of Rachel, Mama Rachel. She was crying too. She said to him, "Yosef, my son, I've heard your cries. I see your tears. I know what happened to you, and I am in pain with you. But I want you to listen to me. I want you to listen to your mother. I want you to place your faith in God. I want you to know that God will watch over you and he will protect you from any harm. So I want you to get up and dust yourself off and head down to Egypt with your new masters, and don't ever fear, because God will watch over you." So during all those years when he was in Egypt, alone, rejected, dejected, forlorn, he had that in his back pocket. His reassurance from his mother from beyond the grave that God would watch over him and protect him. But that's not all. The Medrash goes on. When Yaakov, heard the devastating news about his beloved son Yosef, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and he started screaming and crying, "Yosef, my son, Yosef, where are you? What happened? How can this be?" He was inconsolable, tears streaming down his cheeks. No one could snap him out of it. His son Yehuda gently took his face in his hands and tried to wipe away the tears, but to no avail. Yaakov was still screaming and wailing until finally he composed himself. And he said, "I did not give life to Yosef. I did not create his bones and his flesh and his sinews. I didn't breathe the spirit of life into him. God did. And the same God that gave Yosef to me as a gift has now taken him away. And everything that God does is good." Can you imagine the level of faith? That's a patriarch. His son ripped away from him, presumed dead, and he's proclaiming while crying, everything God does is good. And there's no question that Yosef had received the same level of faith from his father, who must have stuck it into him, into his intestines, into his kishkas. Now we know that nature, the resources and talent and abilities that God gives us, can set a ceiling for our potential. But we also know that it's nurture, the love and the support and the encouragement that we get from our parents, from our family, from our rabbis, from our teachers, from our friends, from our communities, that often plays a bigger role in determining to what extent we will or won't reach that potential. And so there's no question that Yosef was suffused with that love, that nurturing from his parents, and that's what gave him the ability to stand up to and ace every test, knowing that God would always have his back as he always has ours.